So if we now say that this cat that has presented to us in the throes of an episode of cystitis is a 3-year-old female neutered domestic shorthair who lives in a 2-cat household. She has access to the outdoors, but she prefers to stay indoors. You can see that she's a little on the heavy side. She's offered both wet and dry food to eat, but her preference is to eat the dry food. And when you check her urine specific gravity, you find that it is very highly concentrated. And in that scenario, I don't think it's at all unreasonable to make a presumptive diagnosis of interstitial cystitis, explaining to the owner that there may be other factors going on and that you may need to revisit this and further investigations may become needed. But in the first instance, if it all fits a picture of interstitial cystitis, I don't think it's unreasonable to start to institute some first-line treatment measures. And first-line treatment for me is going to be increasing the water throughput to water down the urine, and a very direct and practical way to do that is to deliver a good bolus of subcutaneous fluids in the consulting room while you're discussing with the owner other factors of management and other concerns and considerations in this disease. So a good bolus of subcutaneous fluids is going to kick things off quite nicely. We would also, of course, like to provide analgesia, because this is a painful condition, and we generally would be thinking about using either a non-steroidal or buprenorphine as a means of trying to alleviate the immediate pain. But the honest truth here is, and we have to realise this, that we don't have any analgesics which will cut the pain and stop the episode in its tracks. And owners need to appreciate that and to understand the constraints we're working in, because the kind of pain that we're dealing with in interstitial cystitis is unfortunately not the kind of pain that responds well to our standard analgesics. And that's true in women who are suffering from bladder pain syndrome or interstitial cystitis, as well as our cats. So we do use opioids, we do use non-steroidals, but we do have to warn owners that they are not going to stop the episode in its tracks. That's led to people also casting around to look for other alternatives that might be more effective. And when meropitant was first launched into the veterinary world, there was some interest in whether that might prove to be a useful analgesic in this condition, because meropitant, amongst other things, is an inhibitor of substance P, and substance P is one of the pain mediators in cats with interstitial cystitis. Obviously, it's readily available to us in a licensed form, either injectable, in the licensed injectable form, or as the oral medication off license. Suffice to say, in my hands, I'm afraid I haven't found it to be hugely beneficial to cats when they are in the throes of an episode of FIC, and so I tend to stick with the non-steroidals and or the opioids. But it's something that you will certainly hear talked about and read about. Likewise, people often ask about gabapentin. That's quite a popular drug at the moment in feline medicine as both an anti-anxiety at high doses or a mild analgesic at low doses. But gabapentin really is most effective in chronic pain and in neuropathic pain. And this is an acute neurogenic pain. So again, unfortunately, gabapentin probably not going to be all that effective, and certainly, again, not that effective for women suffering a similar condition. So we would love to have better analgesics to use, but unfortunately, we are quite limited. What is likely to be much more effective in alleviating the immediate signs is that increased water throughput, watering down the urine to make it less inflammatory to the bladder lining. So our subcutaneous fluids at the time in the room are a very effective way of starting that process, and then we need to be talking to owners about ways that they can increase water intake as a general level. And of course, the other side of this condition, which when we start to think about longer term management, we absolutely need to address, are those environmental factors, the chronic stress that the cat is living under. And of course, that can be quite difficult to address and can be quite an involved process, but it is an absolutely essential part of the management of this condition. So when we think about this more long-term measure, more long-term measures, ways that we can encourage cats to take in more water than they think they need, because cats don't have a strong thirst drive, so they don't always know that they need that extra water. They expect to get all the water they need from their food, And then when we feed them with dried food, they are full in the sense of having enough nutrition, but of course they're not getting the water that goes along with it. So a very simple thing, if it can be done and if the cat will accept it, is to simply switch the diet from a dry food to a wet food. And indeed, if they are already having a proportion of wet food, or you are making that switch, encouraging owners to even add a little extra water to the wet food to really help to push more water through the cat than it thinks it needs. Certainly offering palatable, tasty fluids as a treat can also be very helpful, and we think about things like chicken or fish stock, the cat's milk that is available in supermarkets and pet shops. There are lots of cat soups now available, and a lot of cats will enjoy those. And Purina have their Hydrocare product, which again is a kind of liquid comes in a liquid in a sachet, a bit like a soup, and it helps to improve the osmolality of the tissues and also improve the water throughput and encourage production of more dilute urine. So offering palatable fluids to drink as a treat, as well as, of course, having plenty of access to fresh water. And that's going to be many water bowls, at least one more water bowl than there are cats in the house. So 2-cat households, at least 3 water bowls, in positions that are quiet and undisturbed. So they're not in areas of heavy throughput. They're not next to the washing machine that might suddenly go onto a spin cycle when the cat is drinking. So quiet, undisturbed areas, and they need to be separated and well away from both litter trays and food bowls, because cats don't like to drink from water that is in a place that is close to their latrine or to their feeding area where they're killing and eating their prey out in the wild. They generally like wider and well-filled bowls so that they can see the meniscus and know where the water level is. And some plastic and other materials for water bowls will taint the water slightly, and cats may detect that, and so they often will prefer to drink from glass, ceramic or metal containers. And indeed the flavour of the water is a factor. Very often they will prefer rainwater, boiled water or filtered water. So a lot of very simple measures that owners can take in order to try and increase the water intake above what the cat thinks it needs.